The council chamber stretched wide and tall, filled with representatives from over 300 different alien species. Lights from 1,000 different worlds reflected off the polished floor. At the center of it all stood Kyle Martinez, Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. He wore a simple black suit, his hands clasped behind his back as he waited for the Zintharian delegation to arrive. Kyle had been expecting this meeting for weeks. The Zintharians had been making aggressive moves along the border systems. They had ignored Earth's diplomatic messages. They had sent warning shots across human trading vessels. 3 days ago, they had done the unthinkable. They destroyed the colony ship Frontier Hope. 2,000 men, women, and children had been aboard that vessel. Families seeking a new life on the outer colonies. Scientists hoping to study distant worlds. Engineers ready to build new settlements. All of them were gone now, scattered as debris in the cold vacuum of space. The massive doors at the far end of the chamber hissed open. The Zintharian delegation entered. They were tall creatures, nearly 8 feet in height, with 4 arms and scales that shimmered purple and blue. Their leader, Supreme Commander Valketh, strode forward with confidence. Behind him marched 6 warriors in full ceremonial armor. Other ambassadors in the chamber moved aside, creating a wide path. Some species showed fear. Others showed curiosity. The humans who attended with Kyle showed nothing but cold calculation. Valketh stopped 10 feet from Kyle. The alien towered over the human, looking down with eyes that reflected no warmth. He raised one clawed hand, and an assistant produced a data tablet. The Zintharian commander began to speak, his words translated instantly by the chamber's systems. Human representative. The Zintharian collective has tolerated your species long enough. You expand too quickly. You claim too many systems. You refuse to acknowledge our rightful territory. Therefore, the collective officially declares war upon the government of Earth and all its colonies. A murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. Several ambassadors activated their communication devices, sending urgent messages home. The Vraxian delegate, an old friend of humanity, looked at Kyle with concern. Kyle remained still, his face showed no emotion. He simply listened as Valketh continued. Furthermore, the collective demands that Earth surrenders all military vessels, dismantles all defensive installations, and accepts Zintharian governance over human affairs. You have 30 standard days to comply. Failure to do so will result in the complete destruction of your homeworld. The Supreme Commander seemed to relish the moment. His translator carried a tone of smug satisfaction. We have conquered 47 systems. Human, your Earth will be the 48th. Your species showed promise once, but you are weak. You talk of peace and cooperation while we build empires. You will bend the knee, or you will burn. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to Kyle Martinez. The human ambassador stood perfectly still for a long moment. Then, slowly, his lips curved into a smile. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just spotted wounded prey. Several nearby ambassadors actually stepped backward. They had learned to read human expressions over the years of cooperation. That smile meant danger. Kyle reached into his jacket pocket. The Zintharian guards tensed, hands moving toward weapons. But Kyle simply pulled out a small communication device. He pressed a button and spoke clearly. Admiral Cooper, this is Ambassador Martinez. Authorization code, Delta 7 Omega. You are green lit for Operation Righteous Fury. Full deployment of all fleet assets. Rules of engagement are weapons-free on all Zintharian military targets. Lisa Cooper's voice came back immediately, crisp and professional. Confirmed. Ambassador. Authorization received and verified. Operation Righteous Fury is now active. All fleets are moving to deployment positions. Estimated time to first engagement is 48 hours. Kyle lowered the device and looked up at Valketh. The Zintharian commander's expression had changed. Confusion replaced confidence. "What are you doing, human?" Valketh demanded. Kyle's smile grew wider. "You wanted humanity's answer to your declaration of war. You just received it. For 200 years, we have sought peace with the galaxy. We joined this council. We followed the rules. We shared our knowledge freely. We helped species in need. We did all of this because we genuinely wanted cooperation and friendship among the stars." He took a step forward. Despite being half the Zintharian's height, Kyle somehow seemed larger. "But you made a critical mistake, Supreme Commander. You confused our desire for peace with an inability to wage war. You thought our diplomacy was weakness. You murdered 2,000 of our civilians and expected us to surrender." Kyle activated the chamber's main display screen. Images began to appear. Ships, thousands of them. The feed came from multiple locations. Earth orbit showed massive dreadnoughts moving into formation. Luna Base displayed cruisers and destroyers launching in perfect synchronized patterns. Mars revealed entire battle groups emerging from hidden construction bays. The asteroid belt showed carriers releasing wings of fighters. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as more and more ships appeared on screen. The fleet kept growing. What started as dozens became hundreds. Hundreds became thousands. "For 200 years, Kyle continued, his voice carrying through the silent chamber, "humanity has prepared for this day. We hoped it would never come. We built this fleet in secret, praying we would never need to use it. We wanted peace, Commander. We still do. But we learned long ago on our homeworld that if you want peace, you must be strong enough to defend it." Valketh stared at the screens. His confidence had completely evaporated. "This is impossible. No single species maintains a fleet of this size. The resources alone would bankrupt a system. Earth is not like your worlds, Commander. We are what the galaxy calls a Deathworlder. Our planet tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We evolved in high gravity. We survived ice ages and mass extinctions. We fought predators that would terrify your warriors. We built civilization in the face of constant disaster. And yes, we fought each other for 10,000 years before we reached the stars." Kyle walked closer to the Zintharian delegation. "We learned war before we learned peace. We mastered violence before we understood cooperation. And when we finally did reach for the stars, we brought all that knowledge with us. We just chose not to use it. Until now." The ambassador turned to address the entire council. "Let this be a lesson to all who witness this moment. Humanity offered friendship. We extended our hand in peace. The Zintharian collective chose to answer with murder and threats. So now, you will see what happens when you declare war on a species that spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of destruction." Kyle looked back at Valketh one final time. "You have your 30 days, Commander. We suggest you use them to evacuate your civilian populations from military installations. Because in 30 days, the human fleet will arrive in Zintharian space, and we will show you exactly what a Deathworlder species is capable of when you threaten our families." Admiral Lisa Cooper stood on the bridge of the UNS Vengeance, watching as her fleet assembled in the darkness beyond Mars orbit. She was 52 years old, gray streaks running through her dark hair, and she had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. The bridge crew worked in focused silence around her, coordinating the movements of over 2,000 warships. The main view screen showed the assembled armada in all its terrible glory. Dreadnoughts the size of small cities hung in space like sleeping giants. Heavy cruisers bristled with weapon systems that could reduce a moon to rubble. Destroyers darted between the larger vessels like wolves circling prey. And everywhere, support ships carried the Marines, the engineers, the medical teams, and the supplies needed for a campaign that would change galactic history. Commander Jake Peterson appeared at her side, a data tablet in his hands. He was young for his rank, only 35, but he had proven himself brilliant in tactical simulation after simulation. Admiral, final fleet count is complete. We have 2,147 combat vessels ready for deployment. All captains report green across the board. Lisa nodded slowly. Status on the Siegebreaker squadrons? Captain Nina Rodriguez confirms the Retribution battle group is ready. She has 15 heavy cruisers and 40 destroyers under her command. The planetary assault forces are loaded and awaiting your orders. Good. And the stealth ships? Jake smiled slightly. Captain Henry Blake reports, all 50 stealth destroyers are ready. The Zintharians won't know what hit them. Lisa turned from the view screen to face her crew. These were men and women who had trained their entire careers for this moment. Many had lost friends or family on the Frontier Hope. All of them understood what was at stake. Listen carefully, she said, her voice carrying across the bridge. The Zintharians think they know war. They conquered 47 systems. They believe their military might is unmatched. They are about to learn the difference between conquest and survival warfare. She walked to the central command console, her hands resting on the smooth metal surface. Humanity evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. Earth has gravity that would crush most alien species. We survived predators that hunted in packs. We endured diseases that killed millions. We built civilization while fighting ice ages, floods, earthquakes, and volcanoes. And yes, we fought each other for thousands of years. The crew listened intently as their admiral continued. Every war in human history taught us lessons. We learned strategy from ancient generals who commanded armies with bronze swords. We learned combined arms tactics from conflicts that spanned continents. We learned the horrors of total war from battles that left millions dead. We learned precision strikes and surgical operations from modern warfare. And we brought all of that knowledge to the stars. Lisa activated the fleet-wide communication channel. Over 2,000 ship captains could now hear her words. The Zintharians made a simple mistake. They saw our peaceful nature and assumed we were soft. They watched us negotiate and thought we were weak. They killed our civilians and expected us to surrender. Today, we teach them why humanity chose peace. Not because we cannot wage war, but because we are too damn good at it. She paused, letting her words sink in. Rules of engagement are as follows. Military targets are weapons-free. Civilian populations are to be protected at all costs. We are not here to commit atrocities. We are here to break the Zintharian military so completely that they never threaten Earth again. Any ship captain who deliberately targets civilians will face court-martial. We fight with honor, or we don't fight at all. Is that understood? A chorus of confirmations came back from every ship in the fleet. Excellent. Stealth squadrons will jump first. They will eliminate border defenses and sensor arrays. Once the path is clear, the main fleet will follow. Our first target is the Kelthara system, their forward military base. We will hit them hard. We will hit them fast. And we will show them that declaring war on Earth was the worst decision they ever made. Deep in the bowels of the Vengeance, Colonel Amanda Hayes addressed her Marines. 3,000 men and women stood in perfect formation in the massive deployment bay. They wore combat armor, designed to withstand environments that would kill most aliens. Their weapons were tested and ready. Their faces showed grim determination. Amanda had been a Marine for 20 years. She had trained on Earth's surface, where the high gravity built muscle and endurance that seemed superhuman to most galactic species. She had studied every battle in human history. She had learned from humanity's victories and their defeats, and she had waited for the day when she could put that knowledge to use. Marines, she called out, her voice amplified across the bay. The Zintharians killed 2,000 of our people, men, women, and children who wanted nothing more than to build new homes on distant worlds. They murdered them in cold blood. They destroyed their ship. They declared war on Earth, and they expect us to be afraid. She walked along the front rank, making eye contact with her soldiers. Let me tell you what the Zintharians don't understand. They evolved on a low-gravity world. Their bodies are tall and thin. They are adapted for an environment that is gentle and forgiving. Earth is not gentle. Earth is not forgiving. Earth made us strong because only the strong survived. Amanda stopped in the center of the formation. You can operate in gravity that would break a Zintharian's bones. You can march for days on end while they collapse from exhaustion. You can heal from wounds that would kill them. You can survive in environments they cannot even imagine. And most importantly, you know how to fight. Not just how to shoot a weapon, but how to think, how to adapt, how to win against impossible odds. Lieutenant Greg Foster, standing in the front rank, called out, "What are our objectives?" "Colonel, simple." "Lieutenant, we will deploy to Zintharian military installations. We will secure them. We will neutralize any resistance. And we will do it so efficiently that the galaxy understands why you don't fight a ground war with Deathworlders." Another Marine spoke up. "What about their civilians?" "Ma'am." Amanda's expression softened slightly. "We protect them, Corporal. We are not here to terrorize innocent people. We are here to break their military. When this is over, the Zintharians will remember that humanity could have destroyed them completely, but chose mercy instead. That lesson will keep the peace longer than any weapon." Back on the bridge, Lisa Cooper received a communication from Earth Command. Fleet Admiral Richard Carter appeared on her screen. He was an older man, his face lined with age and responsibility. "Admiral Cooper, you have full authorization from the Security Council. The President sends her regards and her confidence in your abilities. Make them regret this war, Lisa." "Understood, sir. We jump in 6 hours." The communication ended, and Lisa turned back to her crew. The bridge hummed with quiet activity as final preparations were completed. Weapon systems were calibrated. Navigation coordinates were triple-checked. Medical bays were stocked with supplies. Engineering teams ran diagnostics on the faster-than-light drives. Jake Peterson approached again. "Admiral, we are receiving reports from the Galactic Council. 17 species have issued formal protests against our military buildup. They claim we are destabilizing the galactic balance of power." Lisa laughed bitterly. "Where were these protests when the Zintharians destroyed the Frontier Hope? Where was their concern when our civilians died?" "Well, Tumant, Ambassador Martinez is handling the political situation, ma'am. He told them that humanity gave peace a chance for 200 years. Now we are giving war a chance for however long it takes." Kyle always had a way with words. "What about intelligence on Zintharian fleet movements? They are scrambling to reinforce their border systems. But our stealth ships have been monitoring them for weeks. We know their positions, their patrol patterns, and their defensive capabilities. They are preparing for a conflict on their terms. They expect us to follow galactic warfare conventions." The Kelthara system sat on the edge of Zintharian space, a military fortress designed to guard their empire from external threats. 3 planets orbited a yellow star, and the second planet housed a massive military complex. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons. Sensor arrays monitored every approach vector. A fleet of 200 Zintharian warships patrolled the system in careful patterns. It should have been impossible to penetrate such defenses. The Zintharians had spent decades perfecting their security. Their commanders were confident that nothing could approach without detection. They were wrong. Captain Henry Blake commanded the USS Shadow Strike, a stealth destroyer that moved through space like a ghost. His ship was one of 50 such vessels, all equipped with technology that made them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. The stealth squadron had jumped into the Kelthara system 6 hours ahead of the main fleet, and they had been patiently working their way past the Zintharian defenses ever since. Henry sat in his command chair, watching the tactical display. His crew worked in near silence, every movement precise and practiced. The Shadow Strike drifted slowly past a Zintharian sensor array, close enough to reach out and touch it, yet completely undetected. "Status?" Henry whispered. Though there was no need to be quiet in the vacuum of space, Lieutenant Sarah Miller checked her console. "We are in position, Captain. All 50 stealth ships report ready. We have targeting solutions on every orbital platform, every sensor array, and every capital ship in the system. Time until main fleet arrival, 90 seconds. Henry activated his communication link to the other stealth ship commanders. All ships, this is Blake. Weapons free on my mark. Remember your training. Hit hard, hit fast, and give them hell. Mark. The space around Kelthara suddenly erupted in silent fury. 50 stealth destroyers opened fire simultaneously. Missiles streaked toward orbital platforms. Railguns launched projectiles at near-light speed toward Zintharian cruisers. Plasma cannons turned defensive satellites into clouds of superheated gas. The Zintharians never saw it coming. Their first indication of attack was when their installations started exploding. Alarms blared across every military vessel and station. Officers scrambled to identify the threat, but their sensors showed nothing. The enemy was invisible, striking from the darkness like vengeful spirits. On the bridge of the Zintharian flagship Dominance, Fleet Commander Zekthor watched in horror as red warning lights filled his tactical display. "Report!" he roared. His tactical officer's claws trembled as he worked his console. "Commander, we are under attack. Multiple targets hit. Orbital platforms 7, 12, and 15 are destroyed. The sensor array on approach vector 3 is offline. We have lost contact with the patrol groups in sectors 9 and 14. Where is the enemy? Show me their positions." "I cannot, Commander. Our sensors detect no hostile vessels. It is as if we are being attacked by ghosts." Zekthor's blood ran cold. The humans. It had to be. But how could they have stealth technology this advanced? The Galactic Council had strict regulations on such systems. Then he remembered. The humans had not been following the Council's military guidelines. They had been building in secret. All ships, activate emergency protocols, full power to sensors, deploy fighter screens, prepare for. His words were cut off as the space at the edge of the system shimmered. Ships began to appear. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands of them, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. The human fleet had arrived, and it blotted out the stars. Admiral Lisa Cooper stood on the bridge of the Vengeance as the fleet completed its jump. The view screen showed the Kelthara system spread out before them. In the distance, explosions marked where Henry Blake's stealth ships were savaging the Zintharian defenses. All ships, maintain formation, weapons free on all military targets. Remember, no civilian casualties. Execute attack pattern Delta 7. The human fleet moved forward like a wave of steel and fire. Dreadnoughts led the advance, their massive hulls absorbing the few defensive shots the stunned Zintharians managed to fire. Behind them, cruisers and destroyers spread out in a wide formation, their targeting systems locking onto every enemy vessel. The Zintharians tried to respond. Their 200 ships moved to intercept, forming a defensive wall around the planet. It was a textbook maneuver, one that had worked in dozens of previous battles. Against the human fleet, it was like trying to stop a tsunami with a fence. Jake Peterson called out from his station. "Enemy fleet is moving to engage. They are attempting a standard defensive formation." Lisa nodded. "Let them. Once they commit, execute hammer and anvil. Heavy cruisers will be the anvil. Fast attack wings will be the hammer. Crush them between." The Zintharian commander made his move, sending his fastest ships forward to disrupt the human formation, while his capital ships prepared to unleash a devastating broadside. It was a tactic that had destroyed enemy fleets before. Against humanity, it was playing directly into their hands. The human fleet split smoothly into two groups. The heavy cruisers and dreadnoughts continued forward at a steady pace, drawing the Zintharian attention. Meanwhile, 300 destroyers and light cruisers accelerated rapidly, swinging wide to flank the enemy position. Zekthor saw the maneuver too late. "They are flanking us!" "Redirect." "Fire." 2. The human destroyers opened fire. Thousands of missiles filled the space between the fleets. Point defense systems on the Zintharian ships tried to intercept them, but there were too many. The missiles were not seeking the capital ships. They targeted the Zintharian fighters and corvettes, the small vessels that provided screening for the larger ships. In 30 seconds, the Zintharian screening force was annihilated. Their capital ships were now exposed, and the human dreadnoughts had closed to optimal firing range. "Fire," Lisa said calmly. The Vengeance and her sister dreadnoughts unleashed their main batteries. Railguns fired solid projectiles, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Each slug carried kinetic energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. When they hit Zintharian shields, the shields simply ceased to exist. When they hit Zintharian hulls, they punched through like paper. The Zintharian flagship Dominance took 3 direct hits. The first penetrated the forward shield generators. The second tore through the ship's midsection. The third hit near the engines, causing a catastrophic failure. The massive vessel broke apart, its reactor going critical in a flash of light that briefly outshone the system's star. Zekthor's last thoughts were of disbelief. How could they have been so wrong about the humans? The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 4 hours. The Zintharian fleet was systematically destroyed. Every ship that tried to fight was eliminated. Every ship that tried to flee was hunted down by the faster human destroyers. By the end, not a single Zintharian military vessel remained operational. Lisa watched the tactical display as the last enemy ship was disabled. "Cease fire. All ships, secure from combat stations. Medical teams, prepare to receive casualties." Jake checked his console. "Our casualties are minimal, Admiral." 3 destroyers took damage, but nothing critical. Crew losses are 43 wounded, 7 dead. Enemy casualties are estimated at over 50,000. The disparity in losses was staggering, but Lisa felt no satisfaction. Those 50,000 Zintharian soldiers had died because their leaders chose war. A communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Lisa took a breath and spoke clearly. "This is Fleet Admiral Lisa Cooper of the United Nations Space Fleet. The Zintharian military presence in this system has been neutralized. We are broadcasting on all civilian frequencies. We are not here to harm your civilian population. However, any planet or station that harbors Zintharian military forces will be considered a legitimate military target." She paused, letting her words be translated into the various languages of the system's inhabitants. "All military personnel are ordered to evacuate from civilian areas within 48 hours. After that deadline, we will remove them ourselves. Any attempt to use civilians as shields will be met with severe consequences. We will send medical teams to assist with your wounded. We will provide food and supplies to any civilian population that needs them. But make no mistake, the Zintharian military will be dismantled, one system at a time if necessary." On the planet below, millions of Zintharians watched the broadcast in stunned silence. Many had never imagined their mighty military could be defeated so completely. Some felt fear. Others felt relief that the war might end quickly. All of them understood that the galaxy had changed. Henry Blake brought his stealth destroyer alongside the Vengeance. His ship had not taken a single hit during the entire engagement. "Admiral, Stealth Squadron reporting. All objectives achieved. 0 casualties. Excellent work, Captain. Take your squadron and scout our next target. I want full intelligence on Pyraxis Prime before we arrive." "Yes, ma'am." Shadow Strike moving out. As the stealth ships jumped away, Lisa turned to her crew. Status. The dropship screamed through the atmosphere of Kelthara Prime, carrying 3,000 human marines toward the planet's surface. Inside the lead transport, Lieutenant Greg Foster checked his weapon for the 3rd time. Around him, His squad sat in disciplined silence, each Marine lost in their own thoughts. Greg was 28 years old, born and raised in Colorado. He had grown up hiking in the mountains, building strength in Earth's heavy gravity. He had joined the Marines at 18, spent a decade training for combat that everyone hoped would never come. Now, finally, he was about to put that training to use. Sergeant Kate Morrison sat across from him, her dark eyes focused on her tactical display. She was 32, a veteran of peacekeeping operations on 3 different colony worlds. She had seen combat before, but never against a major military power. 2 minutes to landing zone, the pilot announced over the communications system. Air defense has been neutralized by our fighters. You should have a clean drop. Colonel Amanda Hayes's voice came through on the squad channel. All units, listen up. Our objective is the main military complex outside the capital city. Intelligence shows approximately 10,000 Zintharian soldiers garrisoned there. They are expecting us, which means they will be dug in and ready to fight. Show them why that was a mistake. Dawn. The dropships hit the ground hard, their landing thrusters kicking up clouds of dust and debris. The rear ramps dropped, and the Marines poured out into the alien daylight. The planet's sun was slightly redder than Earth's, and the gravity was noticeably lighter. The Marines moved with practiced efficiency, securing the landing zone within minutes. Greg led his squad toward their assigned sector. The military complex loomed ahead, a sprawling installation of bunkers, barracks, and fortified command centers. Defensive walls rose 30 feet high, topped with automated weapons systems. It should have been an impregnable fortress. The human assault began with precision artillery strikes. Mobile gun platforms, deployed from the dropships, opened fire on the defensive walls. The shells were not ordinary explosives. They were bunker busters, designed to penetrate deep into fortified positions before detonating. The Zintharian walls, built to withstand conventional attacks, crumbled under the onslaught. First wave, move up! Amanda's order rang out across the battlefield. Greg's squad advanced, using the rubble for cover. The Zintharians opened fire from their positions, energy weapons leaving burning trails through the air. But the Marines were already moving. This, 1-7, their training kicking in automatically. They used cover effectively, advanced in coordinated teams, and returned fire with devastating accuracy. The Zintharians were brave soldiers, but they had never fought an enemy like this. The humans moved too fast, hit too hard, and seemed to shrug off wounds that should have incapacitated them. One Marine took an energy blast to the shoulder, swore loudly, and kept fighting. The Zintharian who shot him stared in disbelief before a human rifle round ended his surprise. Kate Morrison led her fire team through a breach in the wall. Inside, they encountered a squad of Zintharian defenders. The aliens were tall and imposing, but in the lighter gravity of their homeworld, they were slower than the humans. Kate's team moved like water, flowing around obstacles, flanking positions, eliminating threats with ruthless efficiency. Complex Section A7 secured, Kate reported. Minimal resistance. Enemy forces are retreating to inner defensive positions. Greg's squad had similar results in their sector. The Zintharians fought bravely, but they were simply outmatched. Human tactics, developed over thousands of years of warfare, were being applied with devastating effect. Every Marine knew a dozen different ways to assault a fortified position. Every squad could adapt to changing battlefield conditions instantly. Colonel Amanda Hayes watched the battle unfold from her command post. Tactical displays showed human forces advancing on all fronts. Casualties were remarkably light. The Zintharians were learning the hard way that defending against Deathworlders was nearly impossible. Second wave. Deploy to Sector 3. I want that command bunker isolated and secured within the hour. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Zintharians made several attempts to counterattack, but each one was repelled. Human fire support was too accurate. Human infantry was too mobile. Human tactics were too refined. Slowly but surely, the massive military complex fell to the marine assault. In the command bunker at the heart of the complex, General Tharvin realized his situation was hopeless. He had lost 3/4 of his forces. The humans were systematically dismantling his defenses. Soon they would breach the command bunker itself, and then it would be over. He activated his communication console and sent a message to the human forces. "This is General Tharvin, commander of the Kelthara garrison. I request terms for surrender." Amanda Hayes received the message and smiled grimly. "Tell the general we accept his surrender. All Zintharian forces are to lay down their weapons and assemble in the main courtyard. Any soldier who continues to fight will be considered a hostile combatant. We will provide medical care for their wounded and humane treatment for their prisoners." 30 minutes later, the shooting stopped. Zintharian soldiers emerged from their positions, hands raised in surrender. Human Marines secured the weapons, checked for booby traps, and began organizing the prisoners. Medical teams moved in to treat the wounded, both human and alien. Greg Foster walked through the captured complex, his rifle still ready but no longer needed. He saw Zintharian soldiers sitting in groups, their expressions showing shock and defeat. Some were wounded, being tended by human medics who worked with professional efficiency. One young Zintharian soldier, barely more than a child, looked up at Greg with fear in his eyes. Greg knelt down beside him. "You're going to be okay," he said, though he knew the alien probably could not understand him. He offered his water canteen. The young Zintharian hesitated, then accepted it gratefully. Kate Morrison appeared beside him. "Colonel wants us to secure the armory. Intelligence thinks they might have some interesting toys stored there." They made their way to the armory, a heavily reinforced building at the edge of the complex. Inside, they found rows of weapons, ammunition, and military equipment. But what caught their attention was a series of data terminals. "Greg, you need to see this," Kate said, accessing one of the terminals. "These are tactical plans. Looks like the Zintharians were planning a major offensive. They have targets marked across human space. Colonies, trading stations, even Earth itself." Greg studied the information with growing anger. The Zintharians had not just declared war impulsively. They had been planning this for months, maybe years. The destruction of the Frontier Hope was not an isolated incident. It was the opening move in a campaign designed to destroy humanity completely. "Copy all of this and send it to Fleet Command. Admiral Cooper needs to see this." On the Vengeance, Lisa Cooper received the intelligence data and felt a cold fury settle over her. The Zintharians had planned to hit Earth itself. They had target packages for major cities. Casualty estimates ran into the billions. If humanity had not responded with overwhelming force, the Zintharians would have launched a genocide. "Get me a secure channel to Earth Command," she ordered. Fleet Admiral Richard Carter appeared on her screen minutes later. "Lisa, we have been reviewing the reports from Kelthara. Impressive work. 0 civilian casualties, and the military complex secured in under 8 hours. Thank you, sir. But you need to see the intelligence we recovered." She transmitted the Zintharian battle plans. Carter's expression darkened as he reviewed the information. "My God. They were planning to kill billions of us." "Yes, sir. This was not just a war of conquest. This was intended to be extermination. I am requesting authorization to accelerate our operations. The Zintharian High Command needs to be neutralized before they can launch any of these contingency plans." Authorization granted. "Hit them hard, Lisa. Make sure they never threaten Earth again." The communication ended, and Lisa turned to Jake Peterson. "Set course for Pyraxis Prime. That is where their high command is located. We are going to end this war before it gets any worse. Run. 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 Admiral, Pyraxis Prime is heavily defended. Intelligence shows over 800 Zintharian warships in that system, plus extensive planetary defenses. Then we will bring our full strength. Assemble the entire fleet. I want every ship we have ready to jump in 12 hours. On the ground, Colonel Amanda Hayes gathered her Marines. They had suffered 32 casualties during the assault, with 5 killed in action. It was remarkably light for such a major operation, but every loss hurt. Listen up, Marines. We did good work here today. We showed the Zintharians that human soldiers are not to be trifled with. But this is just the beginning. Our next target is going to be much harder. Piraxis Prime is their fortress world, and they will defend it with everything they have. She paused, looking at the faces of her soldiers. These were men and women who had volunteered to protect Earth and her colonies. They came from every corner of the planet, from every culture and background, but they were united in their purpose. We are going to hit them again. We are going to hit them harder, and we are going to keep hitting them until they understand that declaring war on humanity was the worst mistake they ever made. Get some rest. Tend to your gear. We move out in 8 hours. Piraxis Prime hung in space like a jewel, the capital world of the Zintharian collective. The planet was home to 4 billion civilians and served as the military headquarters for their entire empire. Massive orbital stations ringed the world, each one a fortress in its own right. Defensive satellites numbered in the thousands. And surrounding it all, 800 warships stood ready to defend their homeworld. The Zintharian High Command watched the approach of the human fleet with a mixture of fear and determination. They had received reports from Kelthara, stories of the overwhelming defeat their forces had suffered. They knew the humans were coming. They had spent the last 3 days preparing for the assault. Supreme Commander Valketh, who had so confidently declared war just weeks ago, now stood in the war room deep beneath the planet's surface. His confidence had evaporated. The tactical displays showed the human fleet approaching, over 2,000 ships strong. How long until they arrive? He asked. His tactical officer checked the sensors. 6 hours, Supreme Commander. They are maintaining a steady approach, making no attempt to hide their presence. Because they don't need to, Valketh said bitterly. They want us to see them coming. They want us to be afraid. He turned to address his command staff. We will make our stand here. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier will be committed to defending our homeworld. The humans will pay dearly for their aggression. Deep in his hearts, Valketh knew the truth. The humans were not the aggressors. The collective had declared war. They had struck first. And now the price for that decision was coming due. Admiral Lisa Cooper stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, studying the tactical display that showed Piraxis Prime and its defenses. The Zintharians had positioned their fleet well, using the orbital stations as anchor points for their formation. It was a solid defensive strategy, one that would give any attacker pause. What do you think, Jake? She asked her tactical officer. Jake Peterson had been running simulations for days. They have good positioning, Admiral. If we attack head-on, we will take significant casualties. They are counting on us being unwilling to accept losses. They don't understand us yet. Give me options. We could use the stealth ships to hit their sensor arrays first, blind them before the main attack. Or we could split the fleet and attack from multiple vectors simultaneously. Divide their fire. Or, Jake paused, pulling up another simulation, we could use the planet itself. Lisa leaned forward, interested. The planet has 2 moons. Both are large enough to have significant gravity wells. If we position dreadnought groups near each moon and fire at extreme range, the gravitational fields will curve our projectiles. We can literally shoot around their defensive formation. Lisa smiled. That is brilliant. They will have to choose between defending against our main fleet or protecting their orbital infrastructure from the curved shots. Either way, we split their attention. There is more, Admiral. If we time it right, we can use the moon's orbits to create a firing solution that hits their command station, take out their coordination, and their defense falls apart. Make it happen. And Jake? This is going to be the biggest naval engagement in human history. Make sure the crew understands what is at stake." Jake nodded and began issuing orders. Across the fleet, captains received their assignments. The plan was complex, requiring precise timing and coordination. But the human fleet had trained for exactly this scenario. 6 hours later, the Battle of Pyraxis Prime began. The human fleet split into 3 groups. The main force, led by the Vengeance, approached from the standard approach vector. The Zintharian fleet moved to intercept, their ships forming a defensive wall. It appeared to be a conventional engagement, exactly what the Zintharians had prepared for. Then the first dreadnought group near the larger moon opened fire. 6 massive warships launched railgun projectiles at extreme range. The solid slugs, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, curved around the moon's gravity well and screamed toward the Zintharian orbital stations from an unexpected angle. The Zintharians scrambled to respond. Point defense systems tried to intercept the incoming projectiles, but they were moving too fast. 3 orbital stations took direct hits. The damage was catastrophic. Shields failed, hulls were breached, and secondary explosions rippled through the structures. "Second group, your turn," Lisa ordered. The dreadnoughts near the smaller moon fired. More projectiles curved through space, this time targeting the Zintharian fleet's rear positions. Ships that were positioned to face the main human force suddenly found themselves under attack from behind. Their formation began to break apart as captains tried to respond to threats from multiple directions. Main fleet, advance, target their command ship. The Vengeance and her escorts accelerated, driving straight into the Zintharian formation. The enemy fired everything they had: energy, weapons, and missiles, filling the space between the fleets. Human shields absorbed the punishment, and the fleet kept coming. Captain Nina Rodriguez, commanding the battlecruiser Retribution, led her squadron in a flanking maneuver. She had 15 heavy cruisers under her command, and she used them like a precision instrument. All ships, focus fire on their left flank. Breach their line and make them pay for it. The concentrated fire from the human cruisers punched through the Zintharian formation. 3 enemy ships were destroyed in the initial volley. The gap in their line widened as more human ships poured through, getting behind the defensive formation. On his command ship, Valketh watched his careful plans fall apart. The humans were fighting in 3 dimensions, using gravity and orbital mechanics in ways his commanders had never anticipated. Their weapons were more powerful than expected. Their tactics were more sophisticated. And their willingness to press the attack, despite taking fire, was shocking. "Fall back to defensive positions around the orbital stations," he ordered. "Use the station's weapons to support our ships." But the human dreadnoughts were still firing from their positions near the moons. More curved shots slammed into the orbital stations, systematically destroying them one by one. The defensive advantage they provided was evaporating. Lisa Cooper watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The Zintharians were good soldiers, but they were fighting the wrong war. They expected a slow, methodical engagement. Humanity was giving them fast, aggressive, overwhelming violence. "Launch the fighters. I want every Zintharian bomber swatted out of space before they can threaten our ships." Human fighter craft poured from their carriers, small and maneuverable craft piloted by men and women who had grown up on Earth's high gravity. They moved with an agility that the Zintharian pilots could not match, dancing through enemy fire and eliminating threats with precision shots. Lieutenant Danny Brooks, leading a fighter squadron, locked onto a formation of Zintharian bombers. "Blue Squadron, form up on me. Let us show them how Earth pilots fly." His squadron hit the enemy formation like a hammer. In the confused furball that followed, the humans destroyed every bomber without losing a single fighter. Danny pulled his craft into a tight turn that would have blacked out a Zintharian pilot and engaged a new target. The battle raged for 6 hours. Slowly, methodically, the human fleet dismantled the Zintharian defenses. Enemy ships were destroyed or disabled. Orbital stations fell silent. The defensive satellites were reduced to debris. Finally, only Valketh's command ship remained operational, surrounded by the wreckage of his fleet. His communications officer looked at him with desperate eyes. "Supreme Commander, we have lost. We must surrender." Valketh wanted to refuse. His pride demanded he fight to the end. But his duty was to his people, not his ego. He activated the communication system. "This is Supreme Commander Valketh to the human fleet. We request terms for surrender." Lisa Cooper received the transmission and allowed herself a moment of relief. "This is Admiral Cooper. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your surrender is accepted." As human Marines secured the Zintharian command ship, Lisa opened a channel to the planet below. "People of Pyraxis Prime, this is Fleet Admiral Lisa Cooper of the United Nations Space Fleet. Your military has surrendered. This war is over. We are broadcasting to all Zintharian territories. The Collective's military has been defeated. Any system that continues to resist will face the same fate as your fleet here." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "We did not want this war. Your leaders chose it when they destroyed our civilian vessel and demanded our surrender. But we are not here for conquest. We are not here for revenge. We are here to ensure this never happens again. Representatives from Earth will arrive shortly to negotiate a formal peace treaty. In the meantime, we will provide humanitarian assistance to any world that needs it." The fighting is over. On Earth, billions watched the broadcast. In the streets of every major city, people celebrated. The war had been won in less than a month, with minimal human casualties. The fleet that had been built in secret, that many had thought was unnecessary, had proven its worth. Ambassador Kyle Martinez stood in the Galactic Council chamber once again. The other ambassadors looked at him with new respect and, in some cases, fear. The human fleet had demonstrated military power beyond anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. "The war is over," Kyle announced. "Humanity offers the following terms to the Zintharian Collective: complete disarmament of their offensive military, war reparations to be paid over 50 years, a joint commission to investigate war crimes, and after a period of 10 years, if both sides agree, a mutual defense treaty." The Vraxian ambassador spoke up. "These terms are more generous than expected, Ambassador Martinez." Kyle nodded. "Humanity learned from our own history. Crushing an enemy completely only creates future enemies. We want peace. We have always wanted peace. But we needed the galaxy to understand that our desire for peace comes from strength, not weakness." The peace treaty was signed 2 weeks later. The Zintharian Collective became a protectorate of Earth, with strict limitations on military development, but full access to human trade, technology, and protection. 6 months after the war ended, the galaxy was still adjusting to the new reality. The human fleet returned to Sol System as heroes, greeted by parades and celebrations across Earth and her colonies. But the work of peace was just beginning, and it proved to be more complex than the work of war. Ambassador Kyle Martinez stood in the Galactic Council chamber, addressing the assembled representatives. The room was packed with delegates from over 300 species, all eager to understand what humanity's victory meant for galactic politics. The mood had shifted dramatically from the day the Zintharians declared war. Now, when Kyle spoke, everyone listened carefully. "The treaty with the Zintharian Collective is now in full effect," Kyle announced. "Their military has been reduced to defensive forces only. War reparation payments have begun. And perhaps most importantly, we have established educational exchange programs between our species." The Tertian ambassador, an elderly being known for philosophical wisdom, raised a tentacle. "Ambassador Martinez, many species are concerned about Earth's military buildup. Your fleet remains the largest in known space. Some fear you might use it for conquest, now that you have demonstrated its power." Kyle had expected this question. He had been preparing for it since the war ended. "I understand the concern. Let me be clear about humanity's intentions. We built our fleet because we learned from history that hoping for peace is not enough. You must be prepared to defend it. We maintain our military strength for 3 reasons. He held up one finger. First, to defend Earth and our colonies from any future aggression. The Zintharians taught us that there are species willing to use violence to achieve their goals. We will not be caught unprepared again. A second finger went up. Second, to fulfill our obligations under the mutual defense treaties we are negotiating with various council members. Several species have requested Earth's protection. We are willing to provide it, but only to defend, never to conquer. The third finger rose. And third, to maintain stability in this region of space. The Zintharian Collective controlled 47 systems before the war. That power vacuum could lead to chaos if not properly managed. We are working with the Council to ensure an orderly transition. The Vraxian ambassador, who had become a close friend of humanity during the crisis, spoke up. What assurances can you give that Earth will not abuse its military superiority? Transparency, Kyle replied. We are inviting Council observers to visit our military installations. We are sharing our weapons technology with approved defensive alliances. And we are proposing the creation of a new Council security force, one that includes ships and personnel from multiple species, to respond to future threats collectively. This proposal generated intense discussion among the delegates. The idea of a unified military force had been suggested before, but always rejected due to concerns about sovereignty. Now, with humanity demonstrating what a single species could accomplish, the idea seemed more practical. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Lisa Cooper faced a different challenge. She sat in a conference room at the Pentagon, surrounded by politicians, military leaders, and civilian advisors. The question on the table was simple but profound. What should humanity do with its massive military now that the immediate threat was over? Admiral Cooper, the cost of maintaining a fleet this size is enormous, said Senator Patricia Wells, chair of the Armed Services Committee. The public supported the military buildup when we faced an existential threat. Now that the war is over, many are questioning whether we need so many ships. Lisa had anticipated this argument as well. Senator, with respect, the war may be over, but the threats remain. We have identified at least 6 other species with aggressive tendencies. The Kravathi Empire has been expanding aggressively for decades. The Zentari Dominion has been making threatening gestures toward the outer colonies. We need to maintain our strength to deter future conflicts. SIs. Arna. We have new mated empire. But at what cost? Another senator interjected. We could redirect those resources to education, infrastructure, healthcare, and we should, Lisa agreed. I am not suggesting we maintain 100% of our wartime fleet. I am proposing we keep 70% of our current strength and rotate the rest into reserve status. This gives us a ready force to respond to threats while reducing operational costs. The debate continued for hours, but eventually, a compromise was reached. The fleet would be reduced to roughly 1,500 active ships, with another 500 in reserve. The savings would be redirected to civilian programs and to the new Council security force. On Pyraxis Prime, the work of rebuilding had begun in earnest. The Zintharian homeworld had suffered significant damage during the battle, and human engineering teams worked alongside Zintharian crews to repair the orbital infrastructure and restore damaged facilities. Lieutenant Greg Foster walked through the streets of the capital city, no longer in combat armor, but in a simple uniform. His role had changed from warrior to peacekeeper. He and his squad were assigned to protect the human diplomatic mission and assist with reconstruction efforts. The Zintharians watched the humans with a complex mixture of emotions. Fear, certainly, remembering the devastating efficiency of the human military, but also curiosity and, in some cases, gratitude. The humans had defeated them completely but had not engaged in the atrocities that often followed such total victories. A young Xantharian approached Greg cautiously. She was a student, based on the insignia she wore. "Excuse me," she said in halting English. "May I ask you a question?" Greg smiled, trying to appear non-threatening despite being a soldier of the species that had destroyed her world's military. "Of course. What would you like to know?" Why did you not kill us all? Your fleet could have bombarded our cities. Your soldiers could have slaughtered civilians. But you did not. Why? 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 It was a question Greg had been asked many times in the past months. Because that is not who we are. We fought your military because they threatened our homes. But you, the civilians, you did not choose this war. It would have been wrong to punish you for decisions your leaders made. The student considered this. On our world, in our history, when one empire defeated another, the victors often destroyed the vanquished completely. It is strange to us that you would show mercy. Then, perhaps, Greg said gently, this is an opportunity for both our species to learn new ways. Humanity spent thousands of years fighting ourselves before we reached the stars. We learned that mercy and cooperation are stronger than conquest and domination. Not because we are naturally peaceful, but because we survived our own worst impulses and chose to be better. The conversation was interrupted by Sergeant Kate Morrison, who approached with a data tablet. "Greg, we have got a situation at the spaceport. One of the Xantharian military units refused to fully disarm. Colonel Hayes wants us there to support the diplomatic team. They made their way to the spaceport, where a tense standoff had developed. A group of Xantharian soldiers, about 50 strong, had barricaded themselves in a cargo facility. They were not actively hostile, but they refused to surrender their weapons, as required by the treaty. Colonel Amanda Hayes stood outside the facility, speaking with the Xantharian commander through a communication device. Commander Vekthar, you know the terms of the surrender. All military weapons must be turned over to the Joint Commission. The Xantharian officer's voice came back, defiant. We fought honorably. We will not be disarmed like criminals. Amanda sighed. She understood pride. She respected warriors who had fought bravely, even in a losing cause. I understand your feelings, Commander. But this is not about honor. This is about ensuring peace. Your weapons will be stored, not destroyed. If your government forms a new defensive force in the future, these weapons could be returned to authorized personnel. You expect us to trust the word of those who defeated us? Yes, Amanda said simply. Because we have kept every promise we made. We said we would protect civilians, and we did. We said we would provide medical care, and we did. We said we would help rebuild, and we are doing so. We are asking you to trust that we will keep this promise as well. There was a long silence. Then the facility door opened, and Commander Vekthar emerged, followed by his soldiers. They laid down their weapons in an orderly fashion, maintaining their dignity even in surrender. Amanda approached the Xantharian commander and offered her hand in the human gesture of respect. After a moment's hesitation, Vekthar grasped it. You are warriors of honor, he said quietly. Perhaps there is hope for peace after all. Back in the Galactic Council, Kyle Martinez presented the final framework for the new security arrangement. It had taken months of negotiation, but finally a consensus was emerging. The Council would establish a rapid response force, consisting of ships and personnel from 20 different species, with humanity providing the largest single contribution, but not controlling the force. This represents a new era for the galactic community, Kyle said to the assembled delegates. For too long, we relied on the assumption that civilized species would not resort to warfare. The Xantharian conflict proved that assumption false. Now we have a mechanism to respond collectively to threats, without any single species dominating the others. The vote was overwhelming in favor. The new Galactic Defense Initiative was formally established, with its headquarters on a neutral world and its command structure designed to prevent any single species from abusing its power. Admiral Lisa Cooper was offered command of the new force, but declined. "I have served Earth my entire career," she explained to the selection committee. "The GDI needs a commander who can represent all member species equally. I recommend Admiral Kethvar of the Vraxian fleet. He has proven his tactical skill and his commitment to peace." The Vraxian admiral accepted the position, and Lisa returned to Earth to take command of the Sol Defense Fleet, the reduced but still formidable force protecting humanity's home system. On the one-year anniversary of the war's end, a ceremony was held on a space station orbiting neutral territory. Representatives from Earth and the Zintharian Collective came together to dedicate a memorial to all who had died in the conflict. Both human and Zintharian names were inscribed on a massive monument, a reminder that war always costs more than anyone wants to pay. Kyle Martinez stood beside negotiator Thekvar, who had become the Zintharian representative to the Galactic Council. The two had worked closely over the past year, building a relationship based on mutual respect. "A year ago, our peoples were killing each other," Thekvar said quietly. "Now we stand together, working toward a common future. It seems almost impossible, but it is happening," Kyle replied. "Not because it is easy, but because both our species chose to make it happen. We could have allowed hatred to define our relationship. Instead, we chose understanding." "Asko," Thekvar gestured toward the memorial. "Do you think the peace will last?" Kyle was quiet for a moment, thinking about the question. "I hope so. But hope alone is not enough. We have to work at it every day. We have to choose cooperation over conflict, understanding over fear, peace over war. And we have to remain strong enough that those who would threaten peace think twice before acting." "The Deathworlder philosophy," Thekvar said with what might have been a smile. "Speak softly, but carry a fleet that can crack planets. Something like that. Though I prefer to think of it as hoping for the best while preparing for the worst." Across the galaxy, humanity's story spread. Young beings heard how the peaceful species from Earth had responded when pushed too far. Military academies studied human tactics. Diplomatic schools analyzed the balance humanity struck between overwhelming force and measured response. And in the shipyards of Luna, Mars, and the asteroid belt, humanity continued to build, not at the frantic pace of wartime, but with steady determination. Because that is what Deathworlders do. They prepare, they build, they hope for peace, but stand ready for war. 10 years after the conflict ended, the Mutual Defense Treaty between Earth and the Zintharian Collective took effect. Former enemies became allies. Their combined strength, a stabilizing force in their region of space. Admiral Lisa Cooper, now retired, attended the signing ceremony. She watched as human and Zintharian officers stood side by side, representing the new alliance. It was a moment she had never imagined, on that day when she ordered the fleet to attack Pyraxis Prime. Ambassador Kyle Martinez, still serving on the Galactic Council, reflected on the journey. "We set out to teach the galaxy a lesson," he said in a speech marking the occasion. "That lesson was simple. Never mistake restraint for weakness. Never confuse a preference for peace with an inability to wage war." He paused, looking at the assembled crowd of humans and aliens. "But we learned a lesson too. That victory in war is only the beginning. True strength lies not in defeating your enemies, but in turning them into friends. That is the real power of humanity. Not our weapons or our tactics, but our capacity for forgiveness and cooperation." The galaxy had changed because of the war. Humanity had proven it could fight with devastating efficiency, but more importantly, it had proven it could win the peace. The fleet that had been built to destroy had become a force for stability and protection. And on Earth, in the cities and towns where ordinary people lived their lives, children grew up hearing the story of the Zintharian War. They learned about sacrifice and courage, about the cost of peace and the price of freedom. They learned that their world was protected not by wishful thinking, but by the strength and dedication of those willing to stand watch. The human fleet remained ready, a silent guardian in the darkness of space. Most hoped it would never be needed again. But if the call came, if another threat emerged, the ships would deploy and the warriors would answer. Because humanity had learned the most important lesson of all. Peace is not the absence of war. Peace is the presence of strength, wisdom, and the will to use, both in defense of what matters most. The galaxy would not forget what happened when they declared war on Earth. And humanity would not forget that their greatest victory was not defeating an enemy, but building a lasting peace from the ashes of conflict. On the Vengeance, Admiral Lisa Cooper prepared for the fleet's return to Earth. She walked through the ship's corridors, seeing the faces of her crew. They had done what seemed impossible. They had fought the largest naval engagement in human history and won decisively. Colonel Amanda Hayes joined her in the observation deck. "The Marines performed excellently, Admiral. We are ready to go home." "That we are, Colonel. That we are." As the human fleet began its journey back to Sol System, the galaxy settled into a new reality. Humanity was no longer the peaceful newcomer, easily dismissed or threatened. They were a major power, one that preferred diplomacy but could wage war with devastating efficiency when necessary. The lesson had been learned. Never declare war on a Deathworlder species. The Marines dispersed to their assigned areas. Greg found a quiet corner and sat down, his back against a wall. He pulled out a small photograph from his pocket. It showed his family back on Earth. His parents, his younger sister, his nephew who had just turned 3. They were safe because he and thousands like him stood ready to defend them. Kate sat down beside him. "Thinking about home? Always. You? My mom is probably freaking out right now. She never wanted me to join the military. But I knew this day might come. I wanted to be ready." Greg nodded. "Do you think it will ever end? The fighting?" Kate was quiet for a moment. "Maybe. Either way, we will be there, doing what needs to be done." Above them, the human fleet prepared to jump to Pyraxis Prime. The war was far from over. On the landing forces, Colonel Amanda Hayes appeared on the communication screen. "We are ready to deploy, Admiral. Give us 12 hours, and we will have every military installation on that planet secured. You have 8 hours, Colonel. I want this system locked down before their high command can organize a response." Amanda grinned. 8 hours is plenty, ma'am. We will show them what human Marines can do." The dropships began their descent toward the planet below. 3,000 Marines were about to introduce the Zintharians to the concept of ground warfare against a Deathworlder species. It would be a lesson written in fire and steel, one that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The first battle was over. The Zintharians had lost completely, and the human fleet was just getting started. Lisa smiled coldly. Then they are in for a surprise. Humanity wrote the book on unconventional warfare. Send a message to Captain Blake. Tell him the stealth squadrons are cleared to jump. Once they eliminate the border defenses, we follow. Yes, ma'am. As the hours counted down, the fleet prepared to jump into Zintharian space. Across 2,000 ships, over 500,000 men and women made final preparations. They checked weapons. They reviewed tactical plans. They wrote letters home, just in case. They prayed to whatever gods they believed in. And they waited for the order to unleash 200 years of pent-up military might on an enemy that had made the fatal mistake of confusing humanity's peaceful nature with weakness. The Zintharians had declared war on Earth. They wanted to see what a Deathworlder species could do. They were about to find out. And the galaxy would never be the same. The human delegation turned and walked from the chamber. Behind them, the screens continued to show ships. More and more ships. The largest military fleet ever assembled by a single species. The Zintharians had declared war on Earth. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers. It was their memory. They remembered every lesson learned from centuries of warfare. They remembered every tactical innovation born from desperate conflict. And they were about to teach the galaxy why you never back a predator species into a corner. The countdown to humanity's retribution had begun.